I felt the frost stroke my face as I reached and gripped the icy railing, balancing precariously as I stood over the freezer and tried to lower the bag of frozen peas. Unexpectedly, my knee buckled, and I fell slowly to my right, my casted left leg raised awkwardly in the air. This wasn't the return I had imagined from my mountaineering trip to Peru. I was a rock climber, I was a mountaineer, and I sat tearfully struggling to unpack groceries. I discovered mountaineering in my early 30s, fresh from the end of a long-term relationship. It filled my life with a sense of purpose outside of work. The weirdness of being an aspiring mountaineer in a very warm, very southern city attracted a community of endurance athletes who readily accepted that a weighted vest was part of my work uniform and that I slept in an acclimatization tent for 3 months preceding the trip. As I stood atop Mount Vallenareju in the remote Cordillera Blanca in Peru, I reveled in the triumph of the summit and the culmination of 6 months of training. 2 hours later, my foot slid on loose rock, and I heard the unmistakable crack of my left ankle breaking as I tried to stop my fall. Lying atop a steep rocky trail, my backpack still buckled to my waist, I immediately returned to being a physician. Stability, vitals, pulses, sensation, and pain, I methodically assessed. I reset my ankle with a smooth snap, stripped my foot of both boot and sock, palpated pulses, checked sensation, and wiggled all my toes. Are you okay? Another climber shouted from 10 feet below. Am I okay? I thought, struck by my detachment. No, I think I broke my fibula, I yelled back stoically. As he rushed to fetch a guide, I realized that I was hours away from any semblance of medical care or analgesia. My ankle started to throb, and I felt the bones shift when I tried to stand. I wouldn't be able to bear weight for another 3 months. When another climber and guide reappeared, they brought with them the grim reality. Wait half a day for help or rescue myself. I strapped my boot tightly into a makeshift cast, and we started our improvised rescue. I crawled down the mountain, each step down more challenging than the way up. I felt the layers of my ego unravel into a raw awareness of my willingness to endure. Back home, daily chores became my new mountain. Simple tasks like showering or dressing required careful planning and extreme patience and precision. Google searches for tearaway clothing humorously landed me on exotic dancing websites. Sadly, my laughter could only briefly mask my loneliness as I could no longer participate in the runs or climbs that drew my community together. Under the weight of my ego, I was now fragile. Surprisingly, my solace came through work. Entering patient rooms on crutches, my clumsiness with crutches trumpeted my disability, and the grimace on my face as I walked communicated how intimately I shared their pain. I was no longer a detached caregiver who could not imagine what they were going through. I was in the trenches with them, navigating the same rugged terrain of disability and vulnerability. One encounter resonated most for me. A former college professor, now terminally ill, described his lost joy of translating Bengali and how his distended, jaundiced abdomen prevented him from driving. We spoke about lost time to pursue research interests and how our disability robbed us of our joys outside work. There was always a faster, prettier car for him and another taller, more dangerous mountain for me. Speaking honestly, we described how our families had challenged us to be strong and demeaned us when we showed any sign of weakness. Our childhoods reinforced a need to achieve to survive, and our careers symbolized our relentless need for achievement, often at the expense of intimacy and joy. Sitting together, we gave each other permission to rest and accept the hollowness of endlessly striving. At the end of every visit, he gasped with pain and still insisted on getting out of bed to give me a hug. I still think about him and how important his hugs were to me. I recognize how my limited weeks of immobility, petty frustration, and loss of autonomy provided only a glimpse into the persistent pain, fear, and grief that accompany a permanent loss of function or life. The patients I saw were navigating not just physical decline, but the existential weight of finality. Their courage to be vulnerable and generous toward me at times left me in tears. I hope to carry their courage with me when I step foot into the hospital. The mountain's true gifts were neither the triumph of the summit nor the resilience of enduring suffering, but the patience learned with each unsteady step and the quiet power of an embrace of the fragility we all share. I used to believe that being a good doctor meant having all the answers, standing steady while my patients stumbled. Reading that physician's journey from mountain to hospital room, I found myself face to face with a truth I've been learning slowly: the courage to be vulnerable. It took me a long time to grow comfortable with that exposed place. But once I did, I found a new kind of courage: the courage to say, I'm sorry, to admit, I can't fix this, to sit beside someone in their pain without trying to outrun it. That honesty, I hope, has made me a better provider. I'm not the doctor in the story, but I hope that in my own work and my own life, that honesty makes me a little more human, a little more helpful, and maybe a little more whole. Our shared fragility is not a weakness to hide. It might be the most honest thing I bring to the bedside, the very ground where healing begins.